Assalamu alaikum dear viewers. Today in the fourth lecture of UgC Net Prep, I am going to discuss Elizabethan Age, which is the most favorite topic of Net from British literature. Today in this class, I will try to cover the whole Elizabethan Age and their famous writers and their famous works. So without wasting any time, let's start the session. Elizabethan Age 1550 to 1600 AD. The Elizabethan Age is named after the reigning monarch of England at the time, Queen Elizabeth I. The epoch began in 1558 when Queen Elizabeth I ascended the throne and ended with her death in 1603. The age of Elizabeth was a time of intellectual liberty, of growing intelligence, and comfort among all classes. That's why the period is also referred to as the Golden Age. When Elizabeth was ruling England, the period from 1550 to 1600 is called Elizabethan period. It is also called the Golden Age because of the intellectual liberty and growing intelligence of that time. It was a period of Renaissance, it means rebirth. There were many famous poets, dramatists, and essayists in this age. The literature of the Elizabethan age flourished in various forms such as tragedy, comedy, poetry, drama, etc. The most famous poet of Elizabethan age was Edmund Spenser. His major work was the Shepherd Calendar and the Fairy Queen. The Shepherd Calendar was dedicated to Philip Sidney in imitation of the classical poet Virgil. It consists of a series of eclogues in which various characters, in this guise of innocent and simple shepherds, discuss life and love, formulating witty and often satirical opinions on questions of the day. It is in the total 12 eclogues which corresponded to 12 months of English calendar. And the Fairy Queen was his most famous work, which he offered to Elizabeth in an attempt to gain her favor. And the second one was Thomas Sackville. His The Collection A Mirror for Magistrate and Gorboduc. Gorboduc is a play by Thomas Norton and Thomas Sackville. It is the earliest known English drama in blank verse. It is written in collaboration by Thomas Sackville and Thomas Norton. And then came Philip Sidney. His Astrophel and Stella, The Defense of Poetry, The Countess of Pembroke's Arcadia. After Shakespeare's sonnet, Sidney's Astrophel and Stella is considered the finest Elizabethan sonnet cycle. It was probably composed in the early 1580s. Elizabethan age also witnessed the establishment of the theatre in 1576, the earliest theatre ever built. Following the theatre closely were theatres such as the Rose, the Swan, and most popular of all, the Globe, created in 1599. Do remember the name and the date. And then the University Wits. It is a group of English dramatists who wrote in 16th century and were educated at the University of Oxford or Cambridge. They significantly influenced the development of Elizabethan literature. The group include Christopher Marlowe, Robert Greene, and Thomas Nash from Cambridge, and John Lilly, Thomas Lodge, and George Peele from Oxford. Thomas Kidd was also a part of the group, though he was not from either of the aforementioned universities. Major dramatists and their famous works. Christopher Marlowe. His Hero and Leander, Tamburlaine the Great, Edward II, The Tragical History of Dr. Faustus, Dido, Queen of Carthage, The Jew of Malta. He is especially noted for his establishment of dramatic blank verse and also known as father of English tragedy. And then came Robert Greene. His Mammalia, Euphues, his censure to Philotas, Pandosto, The Triumph of Wit, The History of Orlando Furioso, Honorable History of Friar Bacon, and Friar Bungay. Green's literary career began with the romance Mammalia, and his Honorable History of Friar Bungay and Friar Bacon is considered to be one of the first romantic comedies. Then came Thomas Nash. Thomas Nash. His major works were The Unfortunate Traveller, The Life of Jack Wilton, The Anatomy of Absurdity, Pierce Penniless, Terrors of the Night, The Unfortunate Traveller, Summer's Last Will, and Testament. Nash's most significant work is his picaresque tale, The Unfortunate Traveller, or The Life of Jack Wilton. It is an account of the wild oversea adventures of a youngster called Jack Wilton. This work is considered to be the precursor of the picaresque novel and is also sometimes known as the first English historical novel. Then came John Lyly, 1554 to 1606. His Euphues, or The Anatomy of Wit, Euphues and His England, Compass, Sappho and Phao, Mother Bombi, Midas, Love Metamorphosis, Endymion, Galatea, Woman on the Moon. Lyly is best known for his prose romance, Euphues, or The Anatomy of Wit, and its sequel, Euphues and His England. The name Euphues literally means a person well endowed with wit. In Lyly's work, Euphues is a young gentleman of Athens who is graced by nature with great personal beauty and by fortune with a large patrimony. But he uses his brilliant wit to enjoy the pleasure of wickedness rather than the honors of virtue. Euphues exemplifies the demoralized state of Italian society. He is also called the father of English comedy. Then came Thomas Lodge, 1557 to 1625. His major work was An Alarm Against Usurers, Cecilia's Metamorphosis, Rosalind, Euphues' Golden Legacy, A Looking Glass for London and England, a treatise of the plague. He first came to attention in literary circles for his defense of plays in 1580. This pamphlet was written in reply to Stephen Gosson's attack on stage plays. Lodge's best known play is his prose romance, Rosalind, which provided the plot for Shakespeare's As You Like It. And then came George Peele. His major works were The Arrangement of Paris, the famous chronicle of King Edward I, The Battle of Alcazar, The Old Wife's Tale, The Love of the King David, and Fair Bathsheba. His The Arrangement of Paris was a courtly mythological pastoral play which paid tribute to Queen Elizabeth. His The Battle of Alcazar was a semi-historical play, while The Old Wife's Tale was a romantic satire on the current dramatic taste. Then lastly came Thomas Kyd, 1557 to 1594. His The Spanish Tragedy, or Hieronymo is Mad Again, The Householder's Philosophy. Kyd probably began his career as a popular playwright around 1583 and produced his most significant work, The Spanish Tragedy. It was based on the tragedies written by the Roman playwright Seneca, whose plays focused on murder and revenge, and The Householder's Philosophy is the translation of Torquato Tasso's Padre di Famiglia. Now, at last, we will discuss the most famous writer of Elizabethan Age. And I think, being the student of English literature, you all know the name. Obviously, it is William Shakespeare, 1564 to 1616. He was considered to be the greatest writer of the Elizabethan Age. The Elizabethan period was so much dominated by him that many literary figures started calling the Elizabethan Age itself as the Shakespearean Age. Shakespeare's literary life can be divided into four main periods. First literary period 1585 to 1594, second literary period 1594 to 1600, third literary period 1601 to 1608, fourth literary period 1609 to 1613. Shakespeare plays can be classified into the following broad categories: romantic comedy, Shakespearean tragedies, historical plays, problem plays, Shakespearean Roman plays. Shakespearean comedy. Shakespeare perfected the genre of romantic comedy. Most of his comedies are of the romantic type. The main theme of Shakespeare's comedy is love. Works of Shakespearean comedy: As You Like It, Cymbeline, The Merchant of Venice, Taming of the Shrew, Twelfth Night, A Midsummer Night's Dream, and Much Ado About Nothing, The Two Gentlemen of Verona, The Winter's Tale, Comedy of Errors, Love's Labour Lost, Pericles, Prince of Tyre. Books. And then Shakespearean tragedy. Shakespeare's tragedies developed out of earlier 16th century tragedies, which had antecedents in the tragedies of medieval poetry, verse accounts of disaster, suffering, and death, usually of mighty rulers. Works of Shakespearean tragedies: Romeo and Juliet, King Lear, Othello, Julius Caesar, Coriolanus, Macbeth, Hamlet, Titus Andronicus, Antonio and Cleopatra, Timon of Athens. The most four famous tragedies of Shakespeare are Macbeth, Hamlet, King Lear, and Othello. Then Shakespeare's historical plays. Shakespeare's historical plays are related to history, mainly by offering representation of historical figures and the creation of theatre out of historical events. Shakespeare's primary sources for his history plays was Raphael's Holinshed's Chronicle of England, Scotland, and Ireland. Historical plays of Shakespeare's were King John, Richard II, Henry IV Part 2, Henry VI Part 1, 2 and 3, Richard III, Henry VIII, Edward III, Henry IV Part 1, Henry V. And then came Shakespeare's problems plays. While most of Shakespeare's plays fall into the above cited categories of tragedies, comedies, or histories, there are some plays of his which defy the conventions of these genres. These plays of Shakespeare do not neatly fit into any of these categories. It was the critic Frederick S. Bose who first used the term problem plays for some of Shakespeare's plays in 1896. Though the term was not his coinage and was already in use before for writers like Ibsen and Shaw, Bose borrowed and adapted the term for Shakespearean use. Shakespearean problem plays were All's Well That Ends Well, Measure for Measure, Troilus, and Cressida. All three of these plays were written between 1599 and 1605. Lastly, the Shakespeare's Roman plays: Julius Caesar, Antonio and Cleopatra, Coriolanus. Though Julius Caesar, Antonio and Cleopatra, and Coriolanus are included under tragedies, yet they are also sometimes considered by critics in a separate category known as Roman plays of Shakespeare. So please read all the summaries of these works. It will surely come in Net exam. And lastly, Shakespeare based many of his plays on the work of other playwrights. So his play and the sources I have given here. So Thanks for watching the video. Do subscribe for more videos and like, share and comment.